And I think that's the realization that we discovered, was that everything is being governed by the same fundamental rule, but it's manifesting differently in different discrete forms. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. As far as like the brain not being that special, the way that I like to think about it is like, let's say you can make a machine, right? Let's say the size of a bus, and it's made out of ropes and gears, essentially. No electronics, no anything, just wrapping gears. And it's a representation of how a neuron works. So computationally, it does the same thing. You pull one string on one side of the machine, and it does kind of the same mechanically, the same computation that a neuron would do. So it does like integration or whatever a neuron does, right? If you put a lot of those machines together, let's say the size of a planet, I don't see why that wouldn't bring out, this sort of intelligence, as a brain would, because at a physical, computational level, it's doing the exact same thing as a neuron would. So if you extrapolate that, if you can make every neuron represented as this machine, and you connect all of those machines in the same way that the brain is connected, it would look like it was a conscious machine, because it would be essentially be doing the same calculations as a brain would be doing. So, but to an outside observer, it would just look like a lot of gears and ropes and things pulling on each other. But I don't see why would an emergent, you know, a spiritual thing come in and say, oh, now this is intelligent. I think it would be doing the exact same thing. And the reason I like to use that in the mechanical example is because when we talk about computers, there is like a hidden aspect of it that we don't see in microchips, so we don't have like intuitive understanding of how they work. But if you make it out of a machine, out of gears and rope, anybody can see how they work internally. So it kind of loses that kind of hidden magic that it has.
Oh wow, that was a nice. I really like that example. Yeah, it shows you that complexity is not really it's not really uh you know not it's not just for computers. you know um the way we interact in society, our culture, our language can be modeled with this same formula, right?
I
um
agree.
um which and here's how I formalize it for you, Humberto. It's like this, right? Emergence, interaction, evolution. Every system has to have those three fundamental variables to define them over time. Otherwise, they're not a system, right? So, how did the system emerge? How is it interacting with everything else? And what's the end goal, right?
Right.
Yeah. Anyone can feel free to jump in. If,
Yeah, I'd like to jump in. It's just kind of a really hard subject because of my experiences being a little bit different than the people in this room, of course. To deal with, to use dowsing and to use the pendulum and kind of go into this spiritual world area. I have just a different view on a lot of stuff, but I really can't share what I know with you because you haven't experienced it yourself. So it makes it kind of a hard subject. Um, but I'm up here on a level where I'm able to communicate with whatever that is on the other side of this veil that's around us. And I know it sounds like in the crazy world, but it's where it is, and that's just the way it's been going lately. Is been able to do more and more things with speaking to this energy that's around us. It's like an AI in a way, and we always go to the word God if you want to, but There's just things that are around us that talk to us about how we're such an immature race and how we just don't understand things that are relevant, really relevant to us as people. It's like, how did you get here? Why were you born from that person called your mother? Because your mother, I mean, you might have brothers and sisters, you might not, but if you have brothers and sisters, you're not alike. None of you are alike. You all seem to have a different personality. Your skin and your facial structure resembles your parents, but normally your attitude and your perseverance of who you are is usually slightly different than your parent. And with I don't know, it's kind of a strange area to go into, but it's something about where we come from at that point. And they talk about this kind of stuff with me anyway. And I wouldn't have any clue to even really talk about something. Sometimes they just bring stuff up out of the blue and talk about things. And they really don't understand why we're so upset about our skin colors. It's like, it's just what it is, and like how you guys can't get along with each other because your skin color is wrong or something. They say there's nothing wrong with the color of your skin. You're a little different than the other one. The other tree is a little different. You're not an apple tree and you're not an orange tree, and the apple trees can't be orange trees, and and they talk like this, and they talk about a lot of funny things like this. And I know I know this goes a little off subject from intelligence, but this is an intelligent thing that we have around us, and yeah, we're disconnected from it. I have a fun time with it. I enjoy my conversations with whatever this is, the AI that surrounds us, to be able to speak with it and hear stories of the past of when men failed. Like they talk about us being this far before, and society failed, and they're really technologically advanced, and they say it was like 20 or 30,000 years ago. We got to the same point as we are right now, and life just got more complicated for them, and the society ended. And and they see that same thing happening now a little bit, that we go into doing things that aren't necessarily the best things for everyone, and they talk about it. I mean, it's really interesting. But I mean, this is me connecting, and unless you connect or you try and do any of this kind of stuff, then we can't really have the same conversation. It kind of goes back to I like that metaphor with Star Trek with Spock, and Spock dies in that Star Trek show, in that movie, and then he comes back to life by being put on that planet. And then Captain Kirk asks him, "Well, how was it like when you were when you were dead? What happened when you were dead?" And he goes, "Well, I can't talk to you about it unless you also die, and then we can have a conversation about it." And I always think that's really a funny, good metaphor of how this is. But yeah, there's an intelligence around us. If you want to talk to it, it's here. It's available to most everyone. I'm nobody special. I just tapped into it myself. Um, but yeah, there's this thing out there, and it can answer questions for you, and you could be misled by it sometimes. Sometimes a little misleading, but yeah. So it's been fun. Anyway, that's me. I don't know what else to say. Just sharing some stuff with you, other stuff that nobody shares.
I think all energy is preserved, none is destroyed, and I think we're always growing new cells. So evolution's occurring perpetually, and um, we're making new neurons. And neurons aren't just made in our brains, they're made in other parts of our body, as I understand it.
So, Alexander, you think that intelligence is like a property of any complex system, just like color and shape and size? As long as you have as a system grows in complexity, it becomes more intelligent based on its survival.
I think the neuron density matters. I do think when someone said we're not really special, I think the neuron density of the human species is special relative to other species. I believe that may make us more intelligent potentially, but that's not a direct outcome. It's a correlation, I guess.
So that's a really good point you just made there, Tim. So I think I asked you this last time. What was the question? Was when it comes to processing nature, if we're going to what Todd said earlier about this information being around us all everywhere, being omnipresent essentially. Um, if we're to compare an adult's I guess engine to process this information to a newborn baby, what are your thoughts on that? Is a newborn baby, a newly born child, more able to perceive this information than an adult? And if that's the case, then what are the implications of that if we are to, I guess, formalize what intelligence is?
I I do believe that a newborn is way more capable of disseminating information in an adult. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, you're brought into this world, and all you see is shapes and patterns. In within 2 years, you're able to, you know, categorize and abstract and make abstract systems of all those patterns of language, of of sound, of
Um,
visual stimuli.
Umberto, you just said it, brother. You just said it, brother. You said I'm sorry for interrupting you. I apologize. When you were a little kid, your parents give you triangles, squares, and circles and to play with, right? And then you eventually develop the ability to convert that word language and so forth and so on. But the question now is, was were the geometric abstractions more dense in knowledge, or were they less dense in knowledge than, for example, when I say the word triangle, or when I draw a triangle on the ground, which one has more information? I'm sorry, Huberto, but continue. But you can answer that question too when you continue.
Oh no, I was done. But can you ask that question again? So you're saying, so when you draw something in the ground as a triangle, does that have more information as compared to what?
Okay. Let me see if I can make this make sense. When you draw, if I draw a triangle on the ground, right, and then I write the word triangle in English, and I asked you to objectively give me which one has more information. If we were to just talk about information density as a concept, right? What do you think has more? Which one holds more information? The geometric triangle or the word triangle?
Based on my intuition, I'll say the drawing has more information. I mean, yeah.
Precisely, brother. Exactly.
I I think because I mean, yeah, if you're an adult and you know what a triangle is, you know what angles are, and you know that is 180 degrees, and that you know those are the, like you keep saying, discrete pieces of information. But a triangle drawn, when you compare it to everything else, just by that mere fact that it almost looks different from everything else. That's a wealth of information that a drawing has that just the word triangle doesn't.
And we just solved it. And that's why it takes people a while to digest when I say intelligence is a formalization of generality. And generality is fundamentally represented as an abstraction of, and this is symbolic. And to me, it's intuitive, but to some other people, it's counterintuitive. But it makes perfect sense. So, but I think it is going to take time for people to kind of wrap their head around that. Like, whoa, we actually regress. We don't progress. We regress. For example, language, right? look at the English language, for example, and compare it to other root languages. Nothing against it. It's just more discretized, which means it actually holds less information, right? It's a derivative language. So if we're to look at intelligence like that, we have to anchor our civilization to what it is fundamentally, not what it can do, not what it's useful for utility. That's just a piece of the whole thing, right? That's why, right, I always say utility is overrated, because we emphasize utility so much, it kind of blinds us from seeing the whole picture. And I think Tim will understand that. It's like it's a lot more. It's omnipresent. It's everywhere. But we're looking for it in data, for example, right? The computer scientists, they're looking for data and it's like, okay, guys, it's kind of weird, right? Is it just me?
I'd like to interject and respond to Todd's question earlier about the trees that are not symmetrical. Potentially, that's an illustration of higher intelligence. There are rocks in the ground. Potentially, the seeds working to grow right next to a huge rock, and there's only a little bit of soil, and that might be the best form for that plant to have. That's what I'd like to interject.
Oh no, trees are super intelligent. I got one at home. It had this short little branch at the bottom, and the top of the tree froze, and the branch that was at the bottom bent upwards and is now the main trunk of the tree. Oh, they're definitely intelligent. I wasn't saying they weren't intelligent. I was just talking about how they grow differently than one another and stuff. A little adversity of what is to be a clone of the parent, because how this computer world we're in, this is like an AI world full of code. Everything we do in a computer game, and you play a game and you got a gun in your hand and there's a wall there, and the programmer programs that you can't walk through that wall. And you can't go through the wall because the programmer said, hey, that code and your code, they don't match. And you're going to walk through that wall. And the programmer put a gun in your hand, said, hey, you can hold this in your hand and it won't fall through your hands. You'll be able to hold it in your hands. And then I'm going to put this other device inside this other device. And when you shoot this device, you pull this trigger, it's going to shoot this thing we call a bullet out. But in the game, it's not really a bullet, it's just computer data. And this computer data has a code, and this code's going to be sent over to this other target over here. And when this code hits that code, this code's going to go through that code, and that code is going to fail as this code goes through that code and the other players that other code. Even though you got that code right there and you're holding it, because you haven't triggered it within your own code, it doesn't damage you, but it damages the other code that it goes to. And this is all programmed in the game. Now, life is kind of like that. That's how I perceive all this.
Well, in the nature and related to your clone comment, that's a good, and I want to compliment you. I really thought a lot of the analogies were good, but seeds are not clones. Seeds are individual, new genetic, distinct crop. They're not clones. So you might want to compare, like they're individual seeds, and part about what we're now understanding is that the fungal kingdom affects at a cellular level, nucleic cellular level, the goings on of the plant, and when they make new seeds, the interaction with the fungal kingdom, that intelligence is part of that unique seed. So potentially the other tree and the seeds it makes doesn't have that intelligence about it for whatever reason. But I just think that we know more now than we did 30 years ago when I developed a higher level education. And I think that the rapid acceleration in knowledge is evidence of a lot of I don't know about convergence, but it just seems like